I'm Ashley Hopkins Benton. I'm a senior historian here at the New York State Museum. And today I want to share with you our new exhibition on the sculptor Henry DiSpirito. We actually finished this exhibit in December, but we were supposed to have a formal opening celebration in April. So not too many people have gotten a chance to see it yet. I can't wait until you can come in our doors and actually see everything in person. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of background information about the sculptures and about his work as a sculptor. So this is Henry DiSpirito. He was born in 1898 in Castelforte, Italy. And he, from a very early age, really saw the beauty in nature. He was very excited about the landscape around him. He yearned to be an artist. And when he was a young man, he did have some opportunities to start painting and to study painting. But his father was a stonemason, and he was apprenticed with his father. So that was to be his profession, and that is something that he learned early on. In the start of World War I, he went into service with the Italian army. And after the war was over, he was just devastated by what war meant for his country and for his people. And he made the difficult decision that it was time to move to the United States. He had family in Utica, and so in 1921, he immigrated to Utica aboard the ship Duca de Costa. And if we move over, we can see an image that he created. So DiSpirito was primarily a sculptor. In a couple minutes, we'll see his sculptures, but he continued to paint and draw and sketch throughout his life. And throughout his works, we see references back to his home of Italy, references to the refugees that he saw leaving the country for a better life. So this really depicts perhaps some of those people that he traveled with even. So he said he came in 1921. He came into New York City and was put on a train. He didn't speak English when he arrived, so his destination was pinned on his coat, and he was put on board a train. And when he got to Utica and he got off at the train station in Utica, he rejoiced because it was filled with the Carrara marble of his home. So he was very excited. He knew he had found his place. But then he stepped outside, and the streets in Utica were not paved. He saw dirt streets, and he went into a depression because he didn't know what he had gotten himself into. He didn't know what his new life was going to be like. But he did pick himself back up. He started taking English classes. He looked for work. First he found work as a painter, but eventually he did find work as a stonemason and bricklayer. And if we go down on this panel a little bit, we can see one of the images of him working in his trade. And while he did dive into work as an artist as his life went on, he continued to work professionally for many years as a stonemason and bricklayer, doing his sculpture on the weekends and in the evenings. So before we get to the sculpture, I'm going to make you wait a little bit longer. We're going to look at some of his paintings. This first one is called Out My Window, and it is a scene out a window of his apartment on J Street in East Utica. You can see the factory life. You can see some of the other apartment buildings and houses. You get a really great feel of what his neighborhood was like. It was very interesting for DiSpirito as he began to do more and more artwork and kind of become part of the art world. He still lived in this working class neighborhood, and around him, his friends and his neighbors were still very much working class. And if we continue down further, we have another painting, also a Mohawk Valley scene. And I like this one a lot because it's a real juxtaposition of the factories, the working class situation, but also the landscape that he loved so much. And he really came to be very devoted to this landscape of central New York, of the Mohawk Valley. He would go out and paint, he would go out and fish, and he would go out and collect the stones that he used for his sculptures. And we have just one more landscape in the exhibit called Rock, Sky, and Water, likely also showing the Mohawk Valley. So for someone who's working as a stonemason and bricklayer, DiSpirito was looking for jobs at various places. He was involved in construction at numerous different places in central New York, including some of the colleges. He actually worked on the stone wall behind the Munson William Proctor Art Institute. He worked in Proctor Park in Utica. So little jobs here and there. And as he was looking for work, one of the things that he was able to do was to get a job in a WPA art project under E.N. Clark. And he and the team were engaged in building dioramas, showing different historical scenes of central New York. And as he started doing that, he had worked as an artist, as a painter, obviously, but he had not really done three-dimensional work, so he decided that he wanted to learn more. And he enrolled in classes at the Munson William Proctor Art Institute. He worked under the sculptor Richard Davis. And while he was in those classes, Davis said, you are a stonemason, why don't you try carving stone? And that was really the key to his future and his artistic life. So we have some of his stone tools here. You can see the hammers and some of the chisels that he would use to carve the stone. He didn't use any electrified or other powered equipment. It was all done completely by hand. And he found his calling in stone. So before we look at the major installation of the sculptures, I want to show you this photo. So this is DiSpirito in his garden behind their second home on Blandina Street in Utica. And this was the space that he really used as his primary gallery. He created a garden. You can see that he exhibited his sculptures on stumps in a very naturalistic setting. A lot of his sculptures were based on animals or natural life forms. So this was really a wonderful place. And into this garden, he invited art curators, he invited writers, he invited children, school children. So everyone was welcome. And as you see, as we pan over, this was really the inspiration for our exhibit and how we're showing the work here in the museum. We've done our best to recreate that garden space. So here in the garden, you can get a glimpse of our collection here at the museum. We are very fortunate. As DiSpirito set up his life in Utica, he met and married Rose, his wife, and they had 3 children, Dolores, Teresa, and Loretta. And those 3 daughters are absolutely wonderful to us, and they have donated a collection of DiSpirito's work to the museum so that we can share it with you. And what's really special about our collection is that it's really diverse. It includes his stone sculptures, his wood sculptures, his paintings, and his tools, and also some of his drawings. So we get a really big picture of what his life was like as an artist and as a resident of Utica. So here we can see one of his sculptures of a mole. This is carved stone. This one is gabbro. Another really great thing about working here at the museum is that we're not just a history department, we also have scientists that we can talk to. So we were able to talk to the scientists and actually identify all of the stones that DiSpirito found and used for his sculpture.
We have a question. How many sculptures did he make in his whole lifetime?
I don't know the total number. He was very prolific, and you can find his work in a couple public collections. There are also pieces in the Fenimore Art Museum collection, at the Munson William Proctor Institute, at the Canajoharie, at the Arkell Museum at Canajoharie. So there are many, and I have a running list, but I don't know that I could give you a total. So we can also take a look at the toad, another carved stone piece, and that one is made out of gneiss. So these were really typical of the animals that DiSpirito would go out into nature and observe. He would sketch on paper, or he would bring clay out and model it as he was looking at the sculptures. And then if we go up to the elephant in the background, I love this one. He would look at rocks and really see what emerged from them, what kinds of figures would come out of the rocks as he was looking at them. And you can see that this one's a great example of really using the shape of the rock as it was and just carving away enough to reveal the figure that was there. And of course, an elephant is not an animal that he was seeing out in the wild in central New York, but he did also spend a great amount of time at the Utica Zoo. So this may have been something that he observed there. We can also look at the torso from 1948. This piece is made of granite. And a little bit unusual, he did do a lot of portraiture, and we'll see a couple of those in a minute. But he did this one nude torso just to see if he could do it. He knew that classical artists often used the nude figure, and he wanted to try it himself. And then we can look at the fish in the center. I mentioned briefly that one of the things he liked to do when he was out in nature was to go fishing. So we have a portrait of a sucker fish, perhaps inspired by one of his trips to the local streams. We do also in our collection have one piece on plaster, and then we also have another on loan from Utica College that represent his experience as a refugee and the scenes that he saw in his home of Italy. So this first one depicts the refugee bent over, leaning into the wind. The wind is also a subject that appears over and over again in his work. You can see the determination there. And as I said, that piece is from Utica College and is on loan to us. And then you can also see the mother and child from our collection, showing that deep bond of family even as they are traveling as refugees. And if you're interested in learning more, we are working on lesson plans that will support this DiSpirito collection. They will be available on the website ultimately. And one of those lesson plans is focused on his immigration story.
We do have a question about the refugee sculpture. Is that bronze?
No, it's actually painted plaster. In addition to carving stone, DiSpirito also carved wood. And if we look up at the back, it's a little bit dark against the background on the camera, I know, but this is a sculpture called the Water Carrier, and this was inspired by his memories of his home in Italy, specifically of his mother and the other women in the village going down to the center of town and collecting water. And then we also have the sunflower on this side, another carved wood sculpture. Again, like the stone with the wood, he really focused on the form of the natural material as he found it and had the figures really kind of emerge from it.
We have a question. Are there any books about DiSpirito?
Funny you should ask. There is. I wrote a book about DiSpirito, about his life as an artist and as a resident of Utica. It was published by the Fenimore Art Museum. And it also has excerpts from his memoirs, which his daughters translated from Italian, and also written pieces by his daughter Loretta. And it's full of photos of pieces that are in our collection, pieces that are in the Fenimore Art Museum collection, and a lot of pieces that are still in private collections that you can't see. The piece over here, this is a stone sculpture as well. It's called the Toiler's Hand, and it's made of sandstone. And this is really a nod to his work as a stonemason and bricklayer. You can see just the tremendous strength in that hand. And then behind it are some of the tools of the trade, some more chisels and hammers, his chair from his basement studio, and his jacket that he would wear out into nature to collect rocks and inspiration. So as I mentioned, DiSpirito worked for many years as a stonemason, and he did his sculptures in the evenings and on weekends. His daughters also often talk about, was he driving the neighbors crazy with all the clinking and hammering, but he was really engaged in his neighborhood while he was doing that. And then he was really granted a gift. He was asked to become sculptor in residence at Utica College. And that allowed him to focus on sculpture full time. It allowed him to spend time interacting with students on a daily basis, which he absolutely loved. He took a lot of inspiration from them, and some of them took a lot of inspiration from him as well. And his contract was renewed every year until his death. And then ultimately, in 1989, he was honored when Utica College, at that point part of Syracuse University, gave him an honorary doctorate.
And we do have a question. How long will this exhibit be on view?
This exhibit is part of our, I won't say they're permanent because they do change occasionally, but our permanent galleries, and it will be up until we do our gallery renewal. Do we have any more questions? All right, well, thank you all for coming. I'm really glad that you joined me here today to talk about this wonderful artist. He's been an important part of my life for quite a while now. I've actually been studying him since I was in graduate school. So it's wonderful to have these pieces together and to be able to share them with you. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. And I'd also just like to say a very happy birthday to my niece Denver, whose birthday was yesterday. I can't wait to see you in person and celebrate together.